Hey, welcome World Entertainment, and social media truly is the downfall of the Hollywood star, because every one of these actors nowadays just seems to jump onto social media and tarnish their legacy by saying the most stupidest of things over and over again. And Robert Picardo is the latest, because he's escalating fights with Star Trek fans over criticism towards Starfleet Academy. Now, the interesting thing is he doesn't directly attack fans the way a lot of the other actors have been doing so. And not just from Star Trek, from all the Marvel Universe and Star Wars and stuff like that. Now, we are going to look at this article that breaks down his comments. But the funny thing as well is, I am convinced at this stage that when these actors are signing on to projects, that they have a mandate that you must go out onto social media and attack the audience if they have any criticism. And I'll prove that to you when we get to it. But let's have a look at this article that really just tarnish his legacy as the Doctor. He was beloved as the Doctor in Voyager. We are all questioning, why would he come back for something like this? And now the fact that he's going on Twitter and just trying to blast fans for saying this show sucks. Yeah, you're being looked at now in a very different way. So it's saying, veteran Star Trek actor Robert Picardo is once again pushing back against Star Trek fans and their criticism aimed at Starfleet Academy. This time, he's directly targeting long-time viewers frustrated with canon changes, tonal shifts, and what many see as a growing disconnect between Star Trek's legacy and its modern direction. Picardo, best known for playing the Doctor on Star Trek Voyager, has taken on that very same role in Star Trek Starfleet Academy, a series that has already become a flashpoint within the fandom. Over the past several weeks, Picardo has addressed criticism across interviews and social media, often framing fan concerns as overreactions, bad faith, or a lack of humour. To say that about Star Trek fans to start with is ridiculous. It's the same when they attacked Star Wars fans saying, oh, you're all just racist, even though we were all the ones that sat there from the moment they gave casting announcements for The Force Awakens was going, well, where's Lando? Especially when Star Wars fans were the only people wishing James Earl Jones a happy birthday every year, where the Disney account and the Star Wars accounts never did. But the fact that they're trying to call us the problem is ridiculous. So the first real controversy, of course, is the Jem'Hadar controversy. So one of the earliest controversies surrounding Starfleet Academy involves the introduction of a female Jem'Hadar character, something that directly contradicts previously established canon. Historically, Jem'Hadar were genetically engineered, male-only soldiers incapable of reproduction. In an interview shared by co-star Gina Yashir, who is the woman who plays the Jem'Hadar Klingon thing in Starfleet Academy, Picardo dismissed the backlash, arguing that canon evolution is inevitable across centuries of inverse time. So what he wrote was this: a reminder to Star Trek fans, if you can genetically engineer the Jem'Hadar in the 24th century, you can change them in the intervening 800 years in the 32nd century. You can genetically modify them. It's not a big deal. Well, the problem there is his absolute lack of understanding of the Jem'Hadar, which makes sense because he was in a show that never dealt with the Jem'Hadar. But you think he would have looked them up and got his facts straight, because he's clearly talking about, well, you'd engineer them to be female as well, or to be able to reproduce. But the character has established that her father was the Jem'Hadar and the Klingon was the mother. Problem is, the Jem'Hadar were bred for one thing: war. They didn't live very long. And of course, he's talking about engineering over 800 years. Well, here's the issue with that, because fan theories, but more so novels, explained what happened to the Jem'Hadar after the war. So, it says here, after the Dominion War ended in 2375, the Jem'Hadar, designed solely for war and dependent on the drug Ketracel White, were largely recalled to the Gamma Quadrant or left to perish as the founders stopped producing them. With no purpose and dwindling supplies of white, many survivors likely died from withdrawal, turned to piracy, or continued to serve in a reduced capacity. So, what you've just heard there is number one, and this is the one thing that they don't understand when it comes to Starfleet Academy, is the Jem'Hadar were from the Gamma Quadrant. They returned to the Gamma Quadrant, where who knows, maybe they went to war with some other species on that side of the wormhole. But it's the fact that they were left, half of them were left to die. And more importantly, the founders stopped producing them. Therefore, the actual Jem'Hadar themselves would just die out and be no more. So this idea of, well, you could just, over 800 years, genetically modify them to be able to reproduce and stuff. No, because they ran out of the drug, Catracel, which it wasn't the case of they were created and then they'd get them addicted to it. They were born addicted to it, which we also saw in DS9 when they find the baby, grows up to be a Jem'Hadar. Within 3 days, it's fully ready to fight. It can't fight the urge to want to kill everything in sight, except Odo. But more importantly, it started feeling unwell, and they brought him to sickbay, where Bashir flat out went, yeah, he's seemingly dependent on Catracel White, and they had to come up with a replacement for the Catracel White. Wasn't Catracel White, but it was a replacement that would only last for X amount of time. So the fact that they say here the supplies of Catracel White were running out, which means over 800 years they'd have run out, so they would have died off anyway, even just from the withdrawals of not getting the drug. But more importantly, the founders stopped producing them, so the Jem'Hadar themselves are pretty much gone. They're extinct because the founders had no need for them anymore. So Vince continues saying, the explanation did little to calm critics, many of whom argued that the issue was not whether changes could be justified in theory, but how casually long-established lore was being rewritten. For these fans, Picardo's response signaled an unwillingness to acknowledge why continuity matters to a franchise built on internal logic and consistency. So, mocking criticism over the combat scene, which of course is the one big issue everyone has taken and pointed to, saying you're meant to be the best of the best and these idiots are walking around swallowing their comm badges. So Picardo's tone sharpened further when responding to criticism of a scene in which a Starfleet Academy cadet claims to have swallowed her comm badge, a moment many viewers cited as emblematic of the show portraying elite trainees as unserious or incompetent. So what he wrote on X was, some on this platform complained that a Starfleet Academy cadet swallowing her comm badge is ridiculous. On behalf of the franchise, I wish to apologize for tribbles, which are ridiculous, unless you have a sense of humor, which many Star Trek fans have. He also keeps putting ridiculous and tribbles and stuff in quotes. So, the comparison immediately drew pushback. Critics noted that the classic original Star Trek Tribbles episode, The Trouble with Tribbles, featured competent, intelligent officers responding in character to an absurd external problem. By contrast, the Starfleet Academy moment centers on a student at the Federation's most elite institution appearing shockingly careless. For many fans, Picardo's response was seen as a deflection rather than a rebuttal, treating fundamentally different criticisms as if they were the same. One guy even called them out, saying like it's not the same criticism. The tribbles actually were something that were brought in and used, yes, for humor, but it was also to expose the Klingons. That was the actual purpose in the episode, was to expose the Klingons, because they hate Klingons and Klingons hate them. And of course, the guy was disguised as a human. I even pushed back. By the way, Robert Picardo pushed back on that with the dumbest attempt at pushback by saying, well, did you watch? Oh, and the guy said the Tribbles weren't parody. And then Picardo pushed back and said, well, did you watch Lower Decks? And the guy responded back saying, yes, I did watch Lower Decks. But it's the same argument. Lower Decks was a parody of Star Trek, not to mention a cartoon. And I pushed back telling him that, like, Robert, this is an absolute horrendous cope you're trying to do here. And the fact that the Tribbles were these little things that were basically only there to eat and breed again, but more so that they weren't used as this weird joke, to the point where the Starfleet officer is meant to be the best of the best. That they are meant to be the ambassadors of the future. These are meant to be the people to take the human race and every other race into the next generation. That they are meant to boldly go out there with the absolute minds of greatness and stuff like that, to really show how great humanity has managed to become, how far it's come and put. And instead you have a fat retard saying, I swallowed my comrade, and later as well running around going, red alert, red alert. And it's like, wow, like you're being so disingenuous with your pushback with this crap. But then of course there was the fact that he attacked the fan base before the show even aired, where of course he went on Twitter and immediately took offense to everyone calling the show woke. So it says, perhaps most telling is that Picardo's confrontational posture toward fans predates the series itself. On January 11th, before Starfleet Academy premiered, Picardo addressed criticism primitively with a broader cultural framing, where he wrote on X, long before the term existed, Star Trek's heart was woke. And even though that word has been hijacked and made a cudgel to insult, to ridicule, and at the toxic extremes of social media to justify prejudice and racism, this Star Trek's heart is strong and still beating for those listening. This is where they're trying to say Star Trek was always woke, and you still get morons jumping in going, Star Trek was always woke. It even happens in the comment sections of all these type of videos. No, Star Trek wasn't woke. It was never woke. It was a bastion for how great humanity could become, how we could put our differences aside and stuff. The way woke is worked now is the fact that these characters are all identity and nothing but identity, and that's all they focus on. This character is black, and we must make sure that you know, and we constantly call out that this character is black, this one's gay. Let's absolutely push the boundaries that keep telling you this character is gay. That wasn't the case in any Star Trek. From the time it aired in the 60s to the time it ended in 2005 with Enterprise, characters were all different. It wasn't what defined them. That was who they were, but it wasn't what defined them. That's the difference. And even with the Tribbles thing, he's trying to say that, if you look at his comments towards that guy when he's saying Lower Deck, he's trying to say Starfleet Academy is trying to push the envelope of humor in this franchise. You're not pushing an envelope at all. You are denigrating the franchise and making it retarded and for stupid people. That's what you're doing. You're making it for the people who take this short yellow bus to school to watch. That's who you're making this for now. Because pushing the envelope of comedy and humour, well, that's Robert Downey Jr. in blackface. That's pushing the envelope. Having a fat retard swallow her comm badge, that ain't pushing the envelope. That's actually going backwards. That is trying to do something that wasn't even that funny in the 90s. That's what that's trying to do. So they're being so disingenuous, but this is where I think, and can prove, at least I'm pretty sure it's proof, that these guys are mandated to come out and say this crap. Because let's look at it this way. Robert Picardo was out here now, constantly on Twitter, writing this pushback to the criticism of Starfleet Academy. He's even saying toxicity in fandoms and stuff like that. Star Trek, under Alex Kurtzman, since Discovery aired in 2017 or 2018, whichever one of those 2 years it was, has gotten pushback and criticism for the absolute destruction of canon and everything else. Right through to Lower Decks, Picard, Prodigy, Strange New Worlds, and of course Section 31. Where was Robert Picardo arguing this stuff on Twitter then. The same goes with Ewan McGregor when it came to the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. He came out and said, "You're all racist, you're this, you're that, and you're no Star Wars fans in my mind." Except the pushback for a lot of this crap with Disney Star Wars started with The Force Awakens. Then it was still there with Rogue One, smaller, but was there for parts of it. Then exploded with The Last Jedi and continued all the way up until he returned. Where was his comments and his little car videos before he came back in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show? That's right. They didn't have any comments to say. He wasn't on Twitter saying this, and McGregor wasn't making videos in cars saying that. No. It's once they showed up back as these characters in these things that were getting criticized that all of a sudden now is the time to come back and ridicule the fans. That's where you know they're being told to say this shit. You can clearly see it in the Hugh McGregor video because he's clearly reading a script. You can tell that he's reading a script. Okay, this is what Disney wrote for me to say. I better say this word for word, blah, blah, blah. It's the exact same here. Half of this crap Kurtzman is probably handing to Robert Picardo. If you get criticism, make sure to write this on X or Blue Sky or whatever platform you're on. Because otherwise, if they truly meant it and felt that way, they'd been saying it for every one of the shows before the one they showed up in. But they haven't. So that right there is proof that these guys are being told what to say and when to say it. That they are mandated. Oh, not just will we let you back in the show and give you a paycheck, but you're going to have to come out and push back and say this type of stuff. But what do you guys think? Do you think they are mandated to actually push back like this? Don't you find it funny that they only push back for the ones they're in and nothing else? Let me know what your take is on this. And what does your opinion of Robert Picardo feel like now that he's doing this? Has he truly ruined his legacy in your eyes? Let me know. And with that, I shall leave it there for this one. So do like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Cheers, and I will catch you in the next one.